Hello again, and welcome to the Through the Grapevine podcast with your host, Uta Mitchell. You guys just really blew me away last time with your downloads. It was just amazing to just kind of see that number go up like that. I still am in awe of how this last year went. So thank you so much. I appreciate every single one of you. I also do have great news. My shop is now officially open for business, so you can order your hand stamped bracelets. And if you're watching the video, this is what they look like. And I'm going to have the link down in the show notes, of course. So we're going to get started right away. I have a super cool guest today. And I have to tell you, when I saw her for the first time in person, it was last year at the Women in Wine conference. And I was completely starstruck. And I was so starstruck, in fact, that I was too shy to come and say hello.
So,
And then I saw her again in McMinnville a few months later, and I think it was another Women in Wine function. And at the time, Allie and I were sitting at a table next to hers, and she was there with a few friends, and I'm still like sitting over there going, "Oh my gosh, it's Maria Ponzi!"
my goodness.
And again, too shy, but I did get over it. And obviously, I'm still starstruck, but I'm very, very
Mm.
excited and honored to have you here. So, welcome, Anna Maria
Oh
Ponzi.
my goodness. Thank you so much. It's so silly, by the way. I am so, you're the star. Who's got the podcast? Come on.
I don't know. You've been a pretty big person in this valley here and beyond, might I add.
Well, anyway, thank you. It's very generous. Thank you. Perception's everything. We'll dig
Oh.
in. We'll find out exactly what it's really all about today. There will be no more starstruck.
I don't know. I think it might actually be worse.
Uh,
But so here we
Thank you for
go.
having me, and thank you for sharing your stories and interviewing so many wonderful people. I love what you do, and I love just the exchange of conversation between women. And I can say women in wine, which again is such that kind of a special thing for me to be able to articulate, just say those
Yeah,
words. So yeah, great to be
for
here.
sure. Excellent.
Having
Well, when I think of Anna Maria Ponzi, I think of Pinot Girl. You did just publish your book in 2020,
me.
and I just finished reading it. And I think it's such a great book. It really kind of gives an insight into who you are as a person and who your family is. And I am really kind of in love with the beginning where you talk about California.
Yeah,
But what had me chuckling was that part where your mom was hoping you might someday become a glamorous opera singer.
yeah. True.
And then she called you an unattractive bald infant.
Mhm.
And she tried to hide you from the public, which honestly today couldn't be further from the truth.
Mhm.
So, can you talk to me about what it was like to grow up a Ponzi,
Yeah.
especially once you made that move to Oregon and your parents started the winery?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. I think, well, my mother has always been a little bit, romanced with the whole European culture. So I think, yeah, having an opera singer would have probably been her dream for me. Thus the Anna Maria, which was quickly shortened to Maria. But it's been quite a journey. To be honest, we started, as you read the book, so we started with really very humble beginnings, a little tiny little shack and, one bedroom house and kind of grew it from there. I would say, my parents really set the path, right? They're incredibly driven individuals, always kind of ahead of their time in their vision, and certainly inspiring and entrepreneurial, very enterprising people. And I think that, they have these three little kids. And we were expected to keep up the pace. And, I remember in the early days when I started working at the winery, people would always refer to the winery as like my father's winery, right? Their
Hmm.
dad's. And it was always implied that that was really my dad's dream and my dad's business, etc. And yet I always sort of felt like it was never that way. It was always the family. It was truly always the
Hmm.
family because as the book demonstrates, that um, at the age of 4, we were out there planting the vineyard. And at the age of 8,
Right.
we were setting up a tasting room in the garage. And, I was being, slapped around in the back of the Datsun station wagon, selling wine for the first time out of the car, in Portland. I mean, our whole lives from the very, very beginning were centered around the business and the winery and the
Mhm.
vineyard. And so, it has never really not been a part of our family. It's just it's always been there. Um, so I don't know what it's like to be normal. And I think I'm even kind of say that in the book. Like I always wanted to just be, I wanted to live in the suburbs. I wanted a house. I wanted the white picket fence. I wanted the dog. I wanted like the normal life. And yet here we were in the country and we had all these crazy farm animals and drinking goat's milks and, we had a winery. And back in those days, very unlike today, wineries were not a thing. I mean, we were teased as children. I was actually bullied in middle school. We were, dealing with people calling our parents drunks, and so it's
Mhm.
a very different world today when you look around and there are kids now, of winery owners and they're like, ooh, fancy, you have a winery, it's like, ooh, you have a label and, it's completely different. And so, what's it like to be a Ponzi growing up? I mean, it's just like I think I've been able to see kind of the whole deal of what it's like to just kind of come from a lot of work and then just yeah,
Mhm.
fortunately being able to see some great results out of that hard work. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, for
yeah,
sure. And you did write that you were involved in all aspects of running the winery. So I'm assuming that,
yeah,
obviously came with the territory.
right.
But were you at some point just given a choice about it too, especially when you kind of started growing into those teenage years, or was it just like, nah, this is what you do, girlfriend?
No, no, yeah, it was more like that.
Yeah.
No, it's more like it's no, there were no choices. There was no like, would you like to work in the vineyard today? It was like, okay, another day in the vineyard or another day in the bottling line or another day, whatever it was, in the warehouse, when we had a warehouse. But there were never choices. I think it was very much like if lived on a farm, a working farm, and you got up in
Hmm.
the morning and you go and you milk the cows or you go feed the animals and you're in it, you're working it.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is why, again, going back to the book, why I think I speak to, I couldn't wait to leave. As soon as I got the driver's license, I was like, I'm going to go work at Baskin Robbins, man. I'm out. Anything but, dirt and dust and mud and being cold in the winery and being sticky from grapes. I mean, I just like didn't want to have a thing with it. But all of that being said, I think I left for a while. I finally had an escape for a minute after college graduation, and so I was on the East Coast for about 4 years, and then it's sort of like you miss it, right? Then you're sort of like
Hmm.
thinking back, and I don't know if this happens with everybody, but there was this moment of like, where am I now, and what am I doing, and is this really meaningful? And gosh, I kind of miss harvest. I kind of miss
Right.
that excitement and the picking of the grapes. And of course my mother had these big harvest parties and just the tradition around that and
Hmm.
being in touch. And I think without really knowing it, without really recognizing it, the disconnect with the land. And that sounds maybe like poetic or what. I mean, it's not like that. It's just like when you grow, and this sounds very cliche and stupid, but when you grow up on land, in farmland, it
Yeah.
really does become a part of you. And you
Yeah.
become very attached to seasons. You become very attached to the weather. It's just inherent. And I think I missed
Right.
those things from living in the city. And then when I came back, it was sort of like, I was very fortunate again to come back at a time in the industry when it was, the early 90s and things had just started to they were starting to happen. And
Hmm.
and I definitely, being a very independent person myself, I didn't want to just come back and like be, hanging out with my folks or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I wanted a job. I wanted to have purpose. And so again, it was a great time because the industry was being acknowledged and recognized. And so therefore there was a
Yeah.
moment for, more marketing and more promotion and actual sales of the product, which hadn't really been the case. I mean, we'd always been trying to expose the industry, but it really didn't really come to light until like the early 90s of when we were really started to sell wine. So there's a place for me. And then it was very natural for me to come into that spot.
Ah,
Yeah.
I love that. And I do see that. I think, even not growing up on land like
Yeah.
that, I'm, German, so was born and raised in southern Germany,
Yeah.
and the longer I'm gone from Germany, the more I miss it.
Yeah.
And the more I feel, that pull to be there.
Yep.
And I know it's not going to happen, not until I retire anyway. And so I can definitely feel
Hmm.
that sense of belonging, that you might not have had. And I think it's such a natural progression too,
Yes.
to want to get away,
Hmm.
and then at some point remembering, wait, this is home, and I feel that, and I feel that pull,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
um
Just everything, like,
that's
it's
awesome.
like the I think it's just the smells, right? It's like,
Hmm.
if you're around harvest time, the smell of the fruit and the crushing of the grapes, and just the birds, and like that whole thing, when you're really involved in it, the way that we have been involved in it, it's
Hmm.
you realize it's a really special thing. But it does take a long time for you to get that, because you've got to go sow, like you said, you've got to go sow your oats and kind of find out what's out there. And I mean, hell, I was selling advertising, which was about as boring as possibly. It's incredibly boring, but I learned a hell of a lot, and I think that
Yeah.
that's the one thing that I've always encouraged. I have two kids, and I definitely have always encouraged the get out. Got to get out and go see what
Mhm.
else is in the world, and until you really figure out where you want to end up. And sometimes we never know.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to keep going, right? We keep
Yeah.
going
Yeah,
on the
for sure.
journey.
How old are your kids now?
My kids, I had kids really close together, which is a whole other chapter we should talk about. But my kids are 15 months apart. I have a daughter who's 26, and my son is almost 25.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're in Los
So
Angeles.
adult children like mine.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine are, my eldest is going to be 29
Oh
in
my gosh.
August. And then I have a 22-year-old and a 20-year-old. And yeah, it's a whole new thing because I am an empty nester,
Yeah,
and, I no longer have kids in the house. And one of my kids just moved to Germany with her entire family. And so I'm kind of getting over this whole, oh my gosh, they left me.
yeah. Well, I do find myself very envious of some of my friends who their kids are now coming back, and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, dang, lucky you.
right.
Not yet, but not yet. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that. So I do remember visiting the old tasting room
Mm,
a long time ago. And eventually you moved and you opened your current tasting room, which is such a gorgeous and elegant
thank
place.
you.
And I do have it in good authority that you get quite a few rather famous guests there now and then.
Yeah,
And you and your sister were the ones taking the winery to that next level,
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Can you talk about that process a little bit? Was there a goal that you set for
Mm.
yourself, a strategy, or was it like, okay, let's go and jump in and do this thing?
I mean, everything has been very thoughtful, very intentional. Our entire growth of that winery. It really came to the point where we were on the original property where you were. And it was a moment of the realization that all of us, so there was myself and my sister, and then my older brother was involved at the time. And we had all got married, we were all having kids, and all of a sudden, and we were all working at the winery. And there was a moment of like, gosh, you know what? This little winery at 10,000 cases is not gonna work for us, to raise these four
Mhm.
families. So what are we going to do about it? Who wants to leave? Well, nobody wanted to leave. So it was like, okay, well, if we're all going to be in this thing, we're going to have to get real about it, and we're going to have to grow this. And that was a scary moment. I mean, our family has done so many things together. We also started the first craft brewing company, Bridgeport, way back in 1984, and then our restaurant in 1999. So we've always done things sort of as a pack, and
Mhm.
made these very big decisions together, and sat down and said, okay,
Right.
how are we going to do this, and who's in and who's out, and when it came to, are we going to grow the winery, everyone was like, yeah, let's do it. But if we're going to do it, we need to do it well. And I think that this piece is really important, is that, because we were at the very beginning of this building this industry, we had it ingrained in our DNA that that whatever we did was not just about us and our, our personal selves or the family, but it was really always about the region and the industry, and how do we elevate and really, bring the industry up into a global level, right? That was
Mhm.
always paramount from like day one. Like, we're not just going to have a little hobby winery, we're not just going to play winemaker, we're going to do this for real, right? Those very
Yeah.
high ideals were set in place at the very beginning. And so when it came to growing the winery, it's like, well, if we're going to do this, we need to do it right, which means we need a gravity flow facility and we need a state of the art tasting room and visitor center. And so that
Mhm.
meant money, right? That meant like really fully investing in this future.
Yeah.
So it was a huge decision for us, really big decision, because I mean, we were sitting in my office with my brother and sister, and we were like, "Wow, no, things are pretty comfortable." It's like, they're like, "We got this down. Wine is selling." We were selling out every year. I mean, it was a beautiful thing, and it was like, you're jumping off into the unknown, but we did it, and I think we did it in a really, and we did it well. We bought the property, we planted the vineyard, and then we built the winery. And then, I was hanging out at the original property for 5 years until we built the tasting room and the offices. So it was a slow movement. It wasn't like we just dumped everything all at once.
Mhm.
But we did it slowly. And again, I think with a lot of thoughtfulness and a lot of intentionality. The tasting room in particular, I wanted to make it world class. Like, I did want it to I wanted to bring people in. I didn't want it to
Yeah.
be a barn. I wanted it to be
Yeah.
like, okay, wow, this is something spectacular. And seeing people walk up those stairs the first day, I was just like, oh my God, what's happening here? Because there'd never been anything quite like that at that level of, like you said, the elegance. And I do believe it's very elegant. And a special because my husband and I designed and built that together, and that was a really special project in itself. And also, I think having really so many years, 30 some years of understanding a tasting room and hospitality, and really knowing my vision of how I wanted to execute really beautiful hospitality. It was really fun to do that project. It was one of my greatest moments, really. So I'm glad that it's
Oh,
still there. I mean, again,
absolutely.
we no
Yeah.
longer own the winery, but I really,
Right.
it does give me a huge sense of pride, in terms of what we were able to accomplish. And I'm really glad we did it. And we did everything that we wanted to do. And I feel
Yeah.
really fantastic about that. Like, we set a certain standard. We brought people in, not just to the wine industry, frankly, because again, we're sort of in Sherwood.
Right.
We're not in Dundee. So we're not near the domains, right? We're on the other side of the
Yeah.
hill. And so it was a little bit odd to have such a huge place like that. But because of that, I think what happened is that we brought people into agriculture too, right? We kind of forced them to come through the apple, through the apple orchard and through the berries and through the cherry tree, the cherries, and kind of like go, oh, wow, this is where things happen out here. You know what I mean? And so I love that
Right.
about it too, is that we were exposing people to agriculture and this beautiful bounty that we have here in the Willamette Valley. So it hit a lot of buckets for me anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I do remember walking in there for the first time after, years ago having been to the old
Yeah.
place, and we're going, "Well, let's go, let's go to Ponzi."
Yeah.
And then walking up the stairs and walking into the building and going, "Oh,
Yeah.
wow."
Right.
I kind of feel underdressed a little bit.
Oh, yeah, it really freaked people out. And but I always told my staff, and I think for the most part we achieved it. I don't know, we tried to, but was like, hey, we can have this really beautiful facility, but we are
Mhm.
still real. I
Right.
want each of us to still be grounded and real, and
Yeah,
and be
yeah.
friendly and all those things. And some people got, what I mean, staff is staff, but like some people really harnessed and got that. And then there were people that just like, I don't know, they wanted the pretense, which was not what that was not the intention of pretense. It was just, it was really to make a statement that these wines and this place is is some of the best in the world. And
Mhm.
we needed to do
Yeah,
that through the facility. We felt that we needed to do it through the facility at that time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. I
Thank
think
you
it's a
so much.
beautiful place.
Thank
And,
you.
obviously it's wonderful wine.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so how much were your parents involved in in this whole process
Mm.
once you and your sister took over? Was there just, some input, or were they actively involved in growing
Yeah,
the
no, I
company?
know. I mean, I laugh because I'm like, shoot, if they were, they probably would have told us to slow down. No, no, they really weren't. I mean, Luis and I were pretty much the team for a long time there. And really, I mean, we worked really well together. She was, very much involved in production and focused on, the vineyards and the wines, and so quality focused in that arena. And then, my zone was all, everything else was really you know the brand, all those things, the marketing, the sales, all those things that come with that, and then the overall operation. And she and I really shared operations too, because again, we were sort of always built that way, to work together.
Right.
um, and then my folks, Dick and Nancy, they live on one of our vineyards, so they're nearby. In fact, we would laugh because you can see their home from the winery, so we were always like, oh, they're checking us out, from over the hill. But they have always been incredibly generous,
Mhm.
and very, just have always been so graceful with this transfer of authority and direction and ownership. And I think it's kind of the heart of who they are. My dad was a teacher for many years. He taught mechanical engineering. So he's really a guy who loves the journey and loves to teach, and then step away. And my mom, well, she's just lovely, and she's a force of her own. So, she had plenty of things she was working on. And she would, she's still my mom. So she would come in my office and like snoop around and, make sure, everything is in order. But no, no, no. I think that they just kind of were feeling very confident in what we were doing. And it was only when we would have really big decisions, like be it a label
Mhm.
change or something like that we would definitely want to sit down with them and kind of get their feedback. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
for
sure.
sure. So, and you stepped away completely
Yeah.
after the sale.
Hmm.
Is Louisa still making wine
Yeah.
at Ponzi?
Yeah. So with the transaction, of course, the French saw me as just CEO. They didn't. I don't know if they realized that I had all these other hats. um, so when they heard CEO, they were like, "Okay, you get out of here as soon as possible." And yet, of course, wanted to retain the winemaker. So Luisa's still there. I'm not sure how long she'll be there, but yeah, the wines will be fabulous, and as long as she's there. So
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, so it's been a little
That's
bit of a
awesome.
transition, I think, for us too as sisters, just like
Yeah.
that we're on we're on totally different planes right now, kind of.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me a little bit. I know I'm throwing in an extra question here,
Okay.
but tell me a little bit about what was your transition like once you transitioned out of
Yeah.
Ponzi and then decided, now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
How did you decide,
Yeah.
what was
Well, I
next?
still don't know what I'm doing, to say. I'll let you know. I guess I've said this before, but it's you know, in terms of the decision to sell, that was a very, very obviously huge decision, which was one that we made with the family, and actually the third generation too, was involved with that decision. So it was a big decision. And then for me, I wanted to make sure that it was a really great transfer. I mean, I wanted to make sure everybody was okay with it, meaning, distributors, wholesalers, my customer base, my staff. And then when it all happened, there's something very dramatic about that next morning of when you
Mhm.
transfer the ownership to somebody else, and you wake up in the morning and it's like, oh my God, there are no texts, and the phone's not, ringing, and there are no emails, and it's just kind of like, whoa. And I assimilate it to, like, if I was to ever lose like 50 pounds, just like huge relief off my body physically. It was because I didn't
Mhm.
really realize, well, I did realize, but there was a tremendous amount of pressure. um And so that was lifted, and it was great, kind of, but then it was also very like, this feels strange too. So there's a lot of things that go through the process of when you leave something that you've been doing for literally was over 30 years, 35 years. So I think I'm still in that zone of like trying to figure out what's next. My husband and I took a year and we bopped around and traveled here and there for, weeks at a time, which was heavenly. But then it was like, yeah, this isn't it. I got to do something. And
Right.
I really want to do more. I'm not ready to just hang it up. And I think there's some grief in there that I didn't expect to have, but then it happened.
Hmm.
Some deep kind of sadness about just departing. But then a lot of really cool reflection on self. And I've never had that luxury. And who does ever
Right.
really have luxury of taking time to just like stop and just think back on everything that you've done, and and then actually taking it down a little bit more and going, well, you've done all this stuff. What have you done well? What have you enjoyed? What would you like to do? I mean, this is incredible luxury that I have right
Hmm.
now. And I mean, I just, yeah, I get kind of emotional about it because it's like, I never thought I'd have this privilege to just reflect back. And that's what I'm doing
Yeah.
now. But, in the meantime, I'm involved with 5 boards. I'm very active on 5 boards. I started a
Yep.
nonprofit. I started a keynote that I'm super excited about. And, I'm
Yes.
just
And we're
doing
going to
lots
talk
of
about
stuff. I
that
feel like
too.
I'm a hummingbird. I'm like, zzz, all over the place and I'm not anchored. And I'm waiting for myself to land. Like, it's like, where are you going to end up? And I don't even know. I don't even really
Right.
know because I think, like, again, with reflection, you find that gosh, maybe I do like to do a lot of stuff. I'm not a
Right.
singular person. And
Yeah.
realizing that maybe that's okay. It's like
Right.
you're doing so many things yourself. And I think that I think it's okay because I think we're so for so long we're taught that you need to be the best at whatever one thing that you're going to focus on, and not
Hmm.
everybody's built that way. And I think it's okay.
Right.
I think we can
Yeah.
have great impact and make change and do all these amazing things and not be focused on just one career or one focus, one profession.
Do you know how much I love that you're saying this?
Mm,
Because I definitely have felt like this pull into different
mhm.
directions, and I'm trying to, figure out what it is that I exactly want.
Yeah,
But then I'm realizing, well, I don't want just one thing,
right.
and that's okay. And
Yeah.
and I think especially, my transition, I almost feel like yours with stepping away from the winery might be a little bit compared to my own right now as I'm transitioning to an empty nester, where I wake up in the morning and I don't have,
Mhm.
you know, kids all around
Yeah,
all the time, and
yeah.
and it's me and it's my husband and it's my life, and what do I want to do with it?
Yeah.
And guess what? It's 15 different things, and
And you know what?
it's okay.
And it's so fabulous, right? I mean, it's so
Right.
fabulous to have this time in your life to really take that in. And
Hmm.
life is what it is while you're in it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, I figured it out. Now this is what I'm going to do. It's like, what are you doing right now that's bringing you joy? And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, let's listen to
Yeah.
that. Let's listen to that and move into that.
Right.
And honestly, my husband is a very singular guy. Like he's an architect and he's a builder and he's incredible, so talented. But that is his thing,
Yeah.
and he loves it. And he's like, Maria, I think you need to focus. You need to focus. And I'm like, but dude, I can't. Like, I have to have 10 things in order to focus. Right?
Right.
And I think it's okay,
Yeah.
but it's like it's okay. It's okay. I'm realizing that it's okay. So we're all different.
I love that, and we're actually going to go right into that next question,
Mm,
because you are on, or and have sat in the
yeah,
past too, on every like wine related board imaginable,
yeah,
and you've traveled the world, and that actually did include a trip with former governor Kate
yeah.
Brown, to Asia. So, one, what was that trip all about? What was it like? And how, I mean, just reading about it all
Mm.
makes me dizzy. Like I'm on your website and I'm like, oh my gosh, I did this and this and this and this. How do you stay organized? How do you, like, even though you say, I'm the hummingbird, I need to be all over the place,
Yeah.
but you've got to kind of
Yeah.
keep it all together somehow, right?
Yeah. I don't know how I keep it together. I don't use software. I love my list. I'm a list girl. I always have been. Well, I mean, the first thing is, yeah, that was a trade mission with the governor. That was years ago. And that was through my work. Gosh, I don't know if I was a commissioner at that time. I forget what board I was on to have been able to do that, but that was fascinating. So we were in Asia, and I've always been, again, just so privileged to be, an ambassador to this wine industry, and
Hmm.
that was really my role there, was to share about our wines and how beautiful they are, and the how successful the industry has been. So that was really fun. And then, I've served on. I mean, I've been around for a long time. So I served on the Oregon Wine Advisory Board way back when I had my babies. I was hauling them into meetings in Salem in their car seats.
Hmm.
It's ridiculous. But way back when, and then, I started the first Women in Wine Sense chapter when I first came back, because I really believe, I believe back in those days, the Women in Wine was all about, drinking wine in moderation, and using it as a health benefit. So I believed in that. I was involved in that. I've been recently involved with the Oregon Wine Growers Association, which is the advocacy arm of the wine industry, which I find to be very, very important group, which we need more women leaders involved with that, because that is the forefront of the wine industry in terms of what's happening out there, public policy. What's happening with taxes.
Sure.
How are people viewing our wine industry? And there's some real serious issues that we need to be a part of. And I'm still a part of it, even though I've stepped away in an active role of operating a winery. I still believe that we need to keep our eyes on that. Um, Women in Wine, recently joined that board, and I've been very happily working on the mentorship program, which again I believe in. I just like I'm always blown away about how many women there are in this industry now, and I want to just keep that going. And I don't know, what else am I doing. Oh, I'm a commissioner on the Travel Oregon, for Travel Oregon, so I have the opportunity of working with other commissioners in the state tourism office, directing tourism to our state. And so that I've been a part of for a few years. So I dance around into many things. And I think again, it's just kind of part of the DNA at this point. It's like, it's not all about you. It's like, what more can you do? What more can you give to the industry, to the region, to the state, to make things better? And I truly believe that. So I'm definitely a believer of spreading myself out as needed to do those things. I'm also involved a lot in land use, trying to protect the farmland, which is a constant battle as we have the encroachment of development on our farmland. And protecting the UGB, which of course has had moments of recently of being shifted around. So I'm active as much as I possibly can. And like you, I don't have kids anymore. So I mean, I have kids.
Hmm.
Sorry, I still have you guys,
Right.
but
Not in the house.
but they're not under my feet, right? You know what I mean? And oh my
Right.
goodness, it's another amazing opportunity to do good things with your time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So maybe you can tell me, because this feels like a next step for me, is I'd like to sit on a board
yeah,
somewhere. And I did try with Women in Wine. I did eventually not make it in this year. I'm certainly going to try it again. But how did these boards, happen? Like,
yeah.
did you approach them? Did some of them approach you and ask you?
Yeah, it's kind of been a mix. Like the
Hmm.
Travel Oregon, man, I was after them for years, decades. I wanted to be on. That was like I wanted to be that on that commission for a long time. So I went after that one pretty hard. The wine board, or the OWA, I think. I think I also jumped in on that one. I can't remember. You know, it's like everything though, it's the network and hearing
Hmm.
things like
Yeah.
that, like right now, you're telling me this. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write you down. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
because I think it's like it truly. Sometimes we get siloed. There's only so many people that are at the helm of a lot of these organizations, and to be frank
Sure.
with you, I don't think it's very healthy, especially now. We have so many new younger people that are coming into the industry, and their voices need to be at the front. And
Yeah.
I just voiced this earlier last week with OWA. I'm like, we need to find leadership. We need leaders. We need people who are not satisfied with just producing their whatever it is, their small 1,000 cases or less wine. We need to get them involved. They need to come on
Yeah.
in and invest in the
Yeah.
industry. So I'm hoping that if anyone's out there and you're listening and you want to be a part of Oregon wine leadership, I hear you. We need great leaders, and there are so many amazing women out there that we just don't know about. So again, through
Yeah.
Women in Wine, I'm able to kind of see who's out there. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
good stuff. We need more of them. So
Yes. You heard it
I heard
here.
it. I wrote it down. Call Uta.
Oh, I mean the
Oh,
listeners.
and the
But yes,
listeners,
thank you.
and everyone else. Yes, for
Okay.
sure.
So then let's talk about the 4 ounce pour. You did this
Mhm.
talk during the Women in Wine conference, and you talked about creating a long, meaningful, and impactful life.
Mhm.
Can you talk to me about how this concept of the 4 ounce pour came to fruition for you?
Yeah. Well, a couple things hit, I think. Um, One was the reflection part, was the okay, you're no longer operating a winery. So what did that teach you? Okay,
Hmm.
you had pretty much your whole life in that industry. What did you learn from that? And how can that apply to people outside the industry? Ooh,
Hmm.
break outside the bubble. Earth shattering, mind blowing that there are people outside the wine industry, you know what I mean? And I was like really thinking about that. I'm like, there's so much that I've learned about the wine industry because of being in it so intimately.
Hmm.
Um, and I have this, real deep respect and love for the beverage, but I also have a tremendous amount of affection for the culture that wine creates in terms of gathering, in terms of conversation, and I mentioned in the keynote, but like the table and bringing people together at the table and really building relationships. So there's that part of it. So there's a reflection part of it, but then there's also this other piece that happened in January when I was at the Oregon Wine Symposium, and I heard these horrible statistics about how wine drinking is really become reduced in our country, and the alternative
Hmm.
beverages, non-alcoholic beverages and wines are really taking a leap. And I'm fully aware that things go up and down, but at
Hmm.
the level that I've seen in the last year, it's kind of disheartening to me. And it felt like somebody needs to tell the story of wine again, like what's
Yeah.
going on. Like,
Yeah.
wine is this beautiful thing. Maybe we're not taking enough time to really consider what this drink is about.
Right.
Because you know what?
Yeah.
And I say it in the keynote, but it's like, for me, it's not just another spirit. It's not beer. It's not whiskey. It's not bourbon. Wine is something incredibly special when it's made in the way that we make it here in our valley, at least, and in most places. But I think that for so many Americans, that we just consider wine as another alcoholic beverage. And so we're just tossing
Right.
it back and we're just drinking it and we're just jamming on. And it's all about, like, I don't know, a reward at the end of a tough day or whatever the hell. And it's like, no, 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 no. Let's think about wine as a part of a healthy way to live, as a part of nourishing your body and caring for your body, and actually
Hmm.
as part of an experience, as a positive experience. And I know that I know you get this because you've got European roots, but so many Americans, I think, don't even have the idea of that, like the most basic idea of how wine can be enjoyed. And so that's
Hmm.
part of why I came up with this the 4 ounce pour, which is about really being more intentional with everything that we do, all the choices that we make in our life. And that includes how we are eating. Like, what are we eating? How are we eating? Are we eating while we're
Hmm.
reading the phone? Are we talking to somebody across the table? Or are we just stuffing our face? Are we really thinking about the flavors of the food? Or are we just like chowing it down? Because I love ravioli. But like, are you thinking about the flavor of the ravioli? Like, are you, and it's the same with wine. And that's what wine taught me. Wine taught
Yeah.
me slow down, think about the flavors of the wine, really enjoy the flavors. Was that an enjoyable glass of wine, or was that just okay? But just to be more thoughtful, and I
Sure.
assimilate it to wine. But again, I think it can be applied to almost anything you do. In a relationship, like, how am I in this relationship? Self reflection, like, how am I speaking to my child? How am I spending time with my husband? How am I, in everything that you do, just to slow down and be more thoughtful. And I think, like, these are this is a basic message, really. The message is to
Yeah.
slow down and be more thoughtful and be more intentional. But yet I feel like in this hyper paced world that we live in, we wake
Hmm.
up and we grab the phone. It's like the first thing we do
Hmm.
is like, jolt to the system. What's going on?
Yeah.
What do I need to do? Who's coming? What's happening? Instead of like, chill out, breathe in, look outside the window. Oh my God, it's a beautiful day. Don't look at don't look at the weather. Like, look outside. It drives me crazy when people are like, oh, it looks
Yeah.
like it's going to be, look outside. Open the
Yeah.
window, feel it. It's going to rain or it's not.
Yeah.
Smell it. You're Oregonians. You know what it smells like when it's going to rain. You don't need that phone. But I mean, just like, think about how we're living and slow down. And so that's my message about keynote in my keynote address. And I'm hoping to get that message out because I feel like, yes, we all know these things, but I think that sometimes we need to be reminded of these things.
We do need to be reminded. And I think because we do live in such a fast paced world, all you need to do is go into a restaurant, just a regular restaurant, and you are presented with a check halfway through your meal.
Yes.
And they'll always say, no rush, no rush. But what are you going to do? I have my check in front of me. I'm not going to rush. Is it okay for me to order another beverage, or do I need to just like be done?
Do you feel like, because again, you have German roots. I mean, I feel sometimes, honestly, like if my kids are home and we're going to dinner, I want to tell the server, just so you know, we're going to be here for 2 hours. Like, I just want you to know
Yeah.
this table, we're going to hang here. So,
Yeah.
so we're going to be here. do not,
Yeah.
do not bring me my salad and my main at the same time.
Yeah.
And like, my number one thing, right, is like, they bring the check, but then they stand it up, right? They stand it up.
Yes.
In case you didn't see it, it's right in your face, ready to
Yeah.
go at any time. So yeah,
Yeah.
these are the things that I would love to try to move into another direction. And remember that
Mhm.
dining moment, especially when we're going out, those are special moments. Like, those should be
Yeah.
special moments. We spend $100 or more, right? When we're going to
Yeah.
dinner these days. I mean, it's not cheap. It's not like going to the diner, right? I mean, like, let's go ahead and like make that something very special instead of just like, gotta have
Yeah.
food, gotta get out in 30 minutes.
Right. And I will say it is definitely something that I have, even after 23 years here, I still haven't gotten used to really. Because when I'm in Germany, I have to ask for a check when
Yes.
I'm ready.
Right.
This could be 3 hours after I've
That's
arrived.
right.
And I am the one calling my server to please bring me my check.
Yes.
And at that point, they don't even have like the check ready. Most of the time, they write down
Yeah.
what you ordered
Yeah.
throughout.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole conversation around it.
Yeah.
And it's
It's
very,
it's
very
a
different.
totally different approach.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Denmark, I've sold wine in Denmark and Scandinavia, and it's the same thing. It's like, they expect you to be in that room for 4 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. You're going to be there,
Yeah.
the duration. And sometimes, though, it does feel, right, uncomfortably long because we're not used to it,
Right.
right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when Americans do have that experience, they go to Europe and they're sitting there and they're like, where the hell's the check? We've been here for an hour.
Right.
What's next? Come on, let's go. Got to get that book. And then they don't know how to manage it. But it's like, look, you're there to use that table and that linen and the stem and the whole thing, that experience they created for you. They want you to like really soak it in. And
Yeah.
I would love to move in that direction. I believe that the American culture needs a little bit more of that. So I don't know. And I'd
Yeah.
love to get rid of the like the UPC, or whatever, the scan code, not the UPC,
Oh, right. The QR
QR
codes.
card, the QR code
Yeah.
to like, I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want
Yeah.
to sit down at the dinner and then pull out my phone again. Cause like for me, again, for
Right.
me, I'm being very intentional. Like I don't want to see my phone. This is
Yeah.
the dinner time. This is the time with whoever I'm with. This is where I'm going to take my time. I don't want a QR, man. Just
Right.
tell me what the specials are. What the hell?
Yeah.
Come on, let's create a relationship.
Oh gosh, I love it. Yes. All right, moving on. So you also teach a 60-minute wine masters class. What is this class
Well,
and who
this
is it
is very
for?
organic. This is something that I just had a couple people actually just call me or contact me and say, "Hey, actually, the book kind of initiated it. Hey, I read your book. I'm really excited about coming to the Willamette Valley. I've never been there before. Is there like a way I could get an orientation or a master's class?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I guess I could do that. I don't know." So I've kind of put something together. So I'm actually going to do one tomorrow. It's just 60 minutes, but I'm going to do another one that's 90 minutes for another group coming on in September. It's a larger group. And I mean, it's nothing too fantastic other than just sharing the story of what we're doing here. And,
Mhm.
um, and I was like, am I a master of wine? Am I a master of Oregon wine? Not really. I don't have like a pin, but I definitely know enough about it. And I felt like, well, this will be a fun this again, it's a hummingbird. I'm like, this is fun. Let's check this out and see what this is about.
Let's check it out.
So we'll
Yes.
see. And I
I
miss
love
that.
that.
And I actually missed that part about having the winery and not being able to share the story because I did that every day for like years. This
Right.
will be fun for
Yeah.
me anyway.
Okay. I love it. So, your big project,
Yeah.
however, that I've read about
Mm,
has really nothing to do with wine, and it's called Anthony's Circle.
hmm
And per the website, it's a nonprofit that provides critical support to foster youth to ensure high school graduation.
mm,
So, you're one of the founders of Anthony's Circles.
hmm
Can you tell me a little bit about how it started and what you're hoping to accomplish? Of course,
hmm
high school graduation,
Yeah.
but what's the
Yeah.
basis?
Well, beyond wine, I've always tried to, uh, have some interests outside of wine whenever possible. And I have a very good friend who was a foster youth, and she was adopted. And so she introduced me to CASA ages ago. CASA is Court Appointed Special Advocates for youth, for foster youth. And so I sat on their board for like 6 years. And then I moved over to an organization called Project Lemonade, which is a organization that allows foster youth to shop for free. Because it's one of these things with foster youth, they move from place to place so frequently that they often don't have clothing that fits them. They certainly don't have clothing that is, the newest and the greatest. And so when they're heading back to school, trying to give them a boost of confidence. So that was Project Lemonade. I sat on that board. And then the founder of that board and my girlfriend, we all started talking about we need to do more. And for me, it was really looking at Portland and what's happened to this beautiful city and seeing so many people out on the sidewalk and knowing that many of those people have come from being under the foster care, uh,
Hmm.
state care. And then, once that expires at age 21, they really don't have a safety net. And so many of those young people are, end up being incarcerated, running into drugs and addiction issues, and that, and that's the decline starts to happen. Well, it's happened even earlier because I believe that they need help. Well, we're moms, so and I know that you need to have a guiding force along your entire journey, somebody
Hmm.
who you can confide in and that can help you throughout all the decisions you have to make in your life. And certainly in the latter part of your teenage years into graduation, if you're going to go to school, high school, I mean, if you're going to go to college or if you're going to go to a trade school, but those final years are so important. So the idea is to bring a full-time educational navigator into the public school system that will be with foster youth only. So just this
Ah,
segment of the society, of our society, that has really nobody watching over them other than, DHS caseworkers, which really don't get involved on a regular basis the way that this particular person would. So full-time navigation, hopefully from middle school all the way to high school. We've got a pilot project for 3 years. We're just starting to, getting funding now. And looking for support on that. But hopefully we'll start, we're hoping to launch our first school next year. And then my
mm-hmm,
goal, our objective is to get it statewide so that we'll be going down to Albany, um, and hopefully over to the coast as well. And then I'm hoping to get over to, like, the eastern part of the state as well. There's just so many foster youth. There's almost 9,000 kids under foster care right now. And only 35% of them will graduate from high school. 35%.
right.
And I just find that deplorable. So
Yeah.
hoping to raise up the high school graduation rate with this kind of program. So that's what Anthony Circle is all about. And it's you can, learn more about it, anthonycircle.org. And we're just getting going, just started.
I love it. It's beautiful
It's,
and yes, very much needed. I mean, 35%,
it's
that's
horrible. Yeah,
ridiculous.
it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
horrible.
That's really us failing
Yeah,
our
and
kids.
that's what I think.
Um,
So
yeah. So I am going to have that in the show notes, of course, as well,
thank you.
because we're always putting all of the links and everything down into the show notes. Um,
Thank
we are, of course, all about empowering and elevating women in the wine industry on this podcast. And really anyone. It does, we have a lot of listeners who are not in the wine industry who are just very
you.
interested
Hmm.
in listening. And we always ask at the end of an interview, for some words of wisdom as you move through your professional lives. Can you share some of your wisdom with us?
Well, it's always hard for me to get this distilled down to, one sentence because I think there's just
Sure.
so much. I mean, what have I learned? I think, I come from a very strong, uh, my mother was a very strong woman.
Mm-hmm.
Even though she was a woman from the 50s and she married a guy and she did whatever the guy wanted, she was also very strong, and she always wanted her two girls to be incredibly strong and independent. And so I come from an incredible base. My foundation is really, I'm very lucky again. But I think that even with that, as I've moved through my professional life, I think the number one thing is that women just need to use their voice. And it's again, this is where we hear this over and over and over again, but I think it needs to continue to be said that if you want something, you need to go and ask for what it is that you want. You need to
Mm-hmm.
use your voice. And I I don't feel like there should be excuses anymore. When you are at the table and you feel that you're being railed, you need to put your 2 feet down on the floor and you need to say, "Hi, this is who I am and this is what I think." You need to project. You are the one, you need to do that. And it is incredibly uncomfortable, and you will feel incredibly rude, and you will feel like I am the biggest bitch. And then you're going somewhere. Because
Yeah.
if we sit back and expect somebody else to do it for us, it's not going to happen. So we need
Never
to
gonna
actually
happen.
go ahead and find that inner strength, even if it's for like a millisecond. Move on the millisecond, put your feet on the ground and say it. Say whatever it is you need to
Yeah.
say. Joe, actually, Joe, what I would like you to hear. And just project yourself, because I think that we're ready for it. The guys are ready
Yeah.
for it, right?
Right.
They're ready for it, and if they're not, then they need to hear from us. But I think that it's using our voice, and it's not just in at a boardroom or whatever, but it's also when you've been in a job for several months or a year or years, and you feel that you are not being compensated, you need to say something about it on behalf of yourself. You need to do
Yeah.
that. You need to do that for you. You need to protect yourself. You're the only person who is going to protect yourself. So
Yeah.
if you feel that you are worthy, then say it, ask for it. Some of my best workers, not workers, my employees, sorry, um, were women who would just keep doing their work, just go, 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 right? Those girls, they just keep going, keep going. And they never would come to me and say, hey, I feel like I want a promotion, or I feel that I'm ready for this, or could you give me an opportunity to whatever? Can I go to sell wine in Texas? And I think they were leaving it up to me to do it for them. But I'm
Hmm.
running, especially small business owners, like we're running around,
Yeah.
we're assuming everyone's happy, but maybe if that were, and they did, there were some that, would come. But when they come to me and sit me down and go, Maria, I've been here for like a year and I really think I could, I'd be like, hell yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. But you need to advocate for yourself. And I think that's a
Yeah.
really a point that needs to continue to be told to young women in particular who feel that they shouldn't say anything, or it's not right time, or, it's really busy. This is going on, that's going on. Like, if you need it, you got to ask for it, period.
Yeah. For
Just
sure.
period. Do
I
it.
agree. I love it. It's a beautiful message.
I mean, it's
It's a
it's
beautiful
it's
message.
simple. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of other things I would say, but I think to definitely to younger women in particular, um, I feel like they need to continue to hear that that's how things happen. Guys don't have
Yeah.
to ask for it,
Right.
they,
Yeah.
they don't. So so
Yeah.
so stop worrying about the guys. Worry about
Yeah.
you. Take care of you.
Yeah.
Take care of
Yeah.
you. So yeah, of
100%. I love it. Thank you.
course.
So, this is our final question
Oh,
here, and we are actually going on an hour, which is so amazing.
is that a good
I
thing
knew
or a
this was
bad
going to happen.
thing?
I had a feeling we were going to be chatting like that.
Okay. I talk a lot.
So, can you, for just a minute, talk to me about your favorite wine regions that you have traveled to outside of the Willamette Valley, and what regions stand out to you and why?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I've had the great fortune of traveling with my family as a little girl to, like, lots of places. And I hated it, just for the record. Like, it's really no fun when you're 7 years old going to vineyards, just saying. I don't know, maybe it is now. It wasn't then. It was boring as hell. But we were in all these beautiful places. I think, like, I have been to so many beautiful places around the world, and yeah, France and Italy and Portugal, um, Australia. I think that when it really comes down to, what are my most favorite places, it's for me, speaking about me, it's more about, the experience of the people and the
Hmm.
stories, and less about, oh, I had this most amazing wine, because it's like, okay, great. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had, again, I've had gorgeous wines, and that's amazing. But when I leave, DRC, I'm not going, God, that, Vilramani, it was just amazing. It's more like, God, that was a really cool experience on the cellar, the way that he did that, way, whatever, the way he was pulling the wines out, or the fact that there was a bottle that we pulled from 1964. Like, that's the stuff that I remember. And so for me,
Yeah.
wherever I go, it's more about, again, it gets back to the gathering and the camaraderie
Hmm.
and the friendships and the relationships and the people, and then the stories. That's what I take away, because what I have realized is that people that are true uh, wine people, meaning producers of wine, meaning they are in the vineyard as well as in the cellar, the real deal, those people are beautiful people. They are connected to the earth, they're connected to the product, this beverage that they're making, and they love it. But they also know how to enjoy other people, and they love to share. And
Hmm.
that is what I think is so spectacular, and also kind of unknown, because for so many people, I think the lens into the wine industry is that it is romantic and luxurious and privileged. But if you drill down to the people who are the real makers of this beverage, they're
Hmm.
the heartiest, coolest, down to earth people that you'll ever meet.
Yes.
And like
Yeah.
for me, that is what it's all about. And that's what it's
Yeah.
always been about is about that unity, that camaraderie that we share around this beverage. And most specifically, I think you get it when you're talking about Pinot Noir, because it's just this
Right.
really super beautiful grape. It's a beautiful wine when it's well made, and it has so many depths and layers and complexity to it, and so do the people. So for me, wherever I go, I always really am looking more at the people, and I love places that talk about history because I love history, of course. I love to know how did it happen, how was it established, who were the players, and all those things. So I love,
Hmm.
like, we were in Cognac last year, and they had a really lovely display about the origins of cognac and why they're making cognac, you know, along the river, and the vineyards are all the way down the
Hmm.
river, and why we're in the town, and the is here. So anyway, just things like that that I think that are really super interesting. But
I
um,
totally, yeah, I totally hear you there. And interestingly, many years ago, I was, gosh, 26 maybe. And I was always a wine drinker, even as a teenager, because in Germany, that's just how that worked. They would offer you wine at the table with your parents. But I was not really like paying attention to winemaking, and it was just not my passion at the time,
yeah,
right? I
sure.
didn't grow up in that environment, but still to this day, this place in Italy stands out to me, where I don't remember what the name of the winery is called or anything like that.
Yeah,
It was in Tuscany. We stayed there in an apartment in the winery, and they made this most amazing dinner of, four courses, and they served this amazing wine with it. And I remember very, intensely the way it made me
yeah,
feel, the
yeah,
way
yep,
that they poured and they had the conversation. The
yeah,
winemaker was there, and
yeah,
the boss lady was there, and they're, sitting at this table with us, and it's just rustic and old and beautiful,
yeah,
and the way the air smelled,
yeah,
and the way it just all felt with all of these people we didn't know. And
yeah.
it was just the most beautiful thing. Again, don't remember at all what the name was and what the wines
Right.
were, but it was just incredible because of this community
Yeah.
that we had for just that evening. It was
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah.
I is exactly what I'm saying too. It's just like,
Yeah.
and it seems to happen, like those experiences seem to just happen effortlessly, right? They just, like, all of a sudden
Yeah.
there's this beautiful salad that has just been picked from the garden, next door, and
Yeah.
there it is, and the whole thing, and you're just like, wow, this is so amazing. Um, but it's not artificial.
Right.
It's not about pretense. It's about really enjoying. It's like it gets back to the 4-ounce pour. It's like really
Yeah.
enjoying all those things, like the beautiful, whatever it is, like just enlivening, kind of opening up all your senses, right? Your
Hmm.
like you said, your smells, what's on the table, beautiful, whatever it is, floral or food or whatever it is, and it's so exciting. And those are
Yeah.
those are those are the moments that you remember, far more for me, far, I mean, maybe, my sister would say something different, but for me, far more than the bottle of wine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I want you to stick around for just a moment
Sure.
after we sign off, but thank you so, so much for joining me here today. It was an amazing interview. I feel like we could talk another hour easily,
Yes.
and maybe we will have another opportunity to do that again in the future when we kind of catch up with each other and see where we are in life.
Yeah, I would love that. I
So,
would love that. Maybe we'll see each other at a Women in Wine, function coming up, and
for sure, yeah. So, again, everything will be in the show notes, listeners. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And with all that, all I have left to say is, of course, Prost.